Okay, so it looks like we have a good number of people who have joined us, so we'll go ahead and get started with some introductions. That should give another minute or so for anyone who might be still planning to join to jump into the conversation. But hello everyone, thank you so much for joining for our Colgate in Focus session tonight, which is going to go over an introduction to the liberal arts. My name is Alex Fahey. I'm a Senior Assistant Dean of Admission at Colgate. So I'm really excited to chat with everyone, sort of see where you are in the stages of your college search process, and sort of share a little bit of information regarding how the liberal arts might fit as you're moving forward with that process. I'm excited for you. We have a couple of great students and a professor who are going to chat as well today. So I'll have each of you go ahead and introduce yourselves. We'll start in alphabetical order. So Aaron, you're up.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm a rising senior here at Colgate University. I'm from Southern California. I'm an educational studies major and a history major, and I'm trying to get my minor in Native American studies. I'm not sure if I'm missing something.
Should I go next?
Go for it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annette Sinisi. I'm a rising senior from Claremont, Florida. I'm an English major with a minor in environmental studies.
Professor Stern.
Hi, I'm Mark Stern. I'm an associate professor and I'm chair of the Department of Educational Studies. My work is about education policy and urban policy. I sort of look at how those two things interact with each other. And yeah, it's nice to see everyone. And I can't see anybody except for the people that I know, but it's nice to be here.
Excellent. And I'll go ahead and introduce Ben. So we have another admission officer, Ben Kiklak, who is with us today. Ben is probably not going to be on the video too much. He might turn his video off, but his primary role is going to be answering questions. So if anyone has questions, if you're having difficulty with the technology, Ben is going to be your guru. So he'll be in the background helping us out. So we're really excited and really lucky to have Ben joining us today. To give a little bit of an overview about what we're going to do. We're planning for the webinar to be between 45 minutes and an hour. And so the way that's going to work is we're going to start off, I'm going to give a really high level overview about the academic opportunities that are available at Colgate and sort of how that works in with this bigger picture idea of the liberal arts. Once we're done with that, then we have a number of questions so that you can hear from Aaron, you can hear from Annette, and you can hear from Professor Stern about how they see the liberal arts working at Colgate, why they feel that that is something that can be a good option as you're considering your different opportunities for college. Just a quick housekeeping option. If you have questions, we ask that you use the Q&A option, which is located at the bottom of your screen. As I mentioned, that will send your questions to Ben. He can either answer those questions or he can say, you know, that's a really great question. And I think we should hear from the students and hear from Professor Stern on that. If you are having difficulty with connections, having general Zoom difficulties, that is a great option to use in chat. When you chat, you'll send that directly to the 5 of us, and we'll be able to see that. And hopefully someone will be able to resolve that and get you going back in the conversation. But again, just to kick us off with a really high-level overview about academic experience and opportunities at Colgate, and sort of why liberal arts can be a good idea. When I think of liberal arts, the way I tend to define it is that you go through your academic experience and you really build this comprehensive toolkit of different ways of thinking that will allow you to get the best possible result out of any endeavor that you might end up pursuing during your life. When we think about the liberal arts educational experience at Colgate, the thing that truly makes that extraordinary is that it is world-class academic quality that's offered at a remarkably personal level. Every undergraduate course at Colgate is taught by distinguished faculty members. We don't have any teaching assistants, and we have a 9-to-1 student to faculty ratio, which means that our professors truly get to know our students and they get to mentor them. Professors want to talk to students, they want to know what you're passionate about, and they want to know what you're hoping to gain from each course. Our students aren't afraid to explore classes that are in a discipline outside of the one that they primarily focus in. This is why Colgate is a top choice for students who are driven and are eager to really engage with informative teaching. One aspect of the academic program at Colgate is a core curriculum, which is a common academic experience for all of our students. The history of the core at Colgate dates back about 90 years, but we think of it as really being ageless. It's 1 year old every year because our faculty are constantly discussing, they're debating, they're revising the core curriculum so it's able to fulfill its promise of being timely, of being relevant, and setting our students up to be able to be really active participants in these ongoing global conversations. And student feedback is also a critical component of that core revision process, as there was recently a high-level discussion amongst faculty about how to include topics of diversity, inclusion, and cultural competencies in that core curriculum so that everyone can be involved in these foundational conversations. Even though the core is a small slice of your overall experience, usually only 4 classes that you'll take during your 4 years, it really does allow students to engage with these really important questions that all individuals will need to pursue at some point during their lives. In addition to the core curriculum, all students will work with at least one, but often more than one, area of focus. The academics at Colgate span 56 different major programs, but there's a lot of flexibility. So a lot of students will add either a minor or a second major. I think it's important to link this back to that idea of the liberal arts and that flexibility that we discussed earlier, because when students apply to Colgate, we don't ask them to tell us what their major will be on their application. We actually don't have them tell us their major until the second semester of their sophomore year. We want students to be able to come in and take a variety of different classes. We know there are so many topics taught on a college campus that you might not have had the chance to explore in high school. And how will you know if that area is the right fit for you if you haven't had the chance to try it for yourself? Taking these classes, core classes, classes beyond the core, diving into your major, this really links back to those faculty members that we talked about earlier. The faculty at Colgate have a really proud reputation of being approachable, being involved, being invested, and really being inspirational for our students. It's common on campus to hear students talk about their classes by the name of the professor that teaches that course, which reflects how our students feel, that personal connection to the material because of the connection that they have with the faculty member. So all of what we've talked about so far really paints a picture of Colgate, of the liberal arts experience, as a small community, small classes, a great deal of flexibility, which it is. But it's important not to lose sight of the fact that there are also a lot of opportunities at Colgate that are more representative of larger campuses. And one example of that is research. Colgate has a commitment to research. To sort of put a number on that, the university allocates about $800,000 each year for students to pursue summer research projects. Research at Colgate is ambitious, it's distinguished in quality, it's highly respected by peers and awarded. But the thing that's really cool about it is who gets to work on it. And the answer to that is that it's our undergraduates, with over 80% of students working on research of some kind during their undergraduate years. We make this a possibility pretty much from the moment you arrive. Because we're an undergraduate campus, our students aren't competing with graduate students. And that's really the differentiator, is the chance for students to get involved on projects both large and small, simply by asking. And the final point that is sort of a hallmark of the academic experience that we'll talk about throughout the conversation tonight is the opportunity to study off campus. Colgate opens the world to students not only through the conversations, the discussions, the involvement that you have on campus, but by offering students a really profound opportunity to see the world for themselves. Colgate has long held a commitment to helping students understand and appreciate the importance of diverse cultures and communities around the world. And that results in one of the most revered off-campus study programs that you see anywhere. More than half of Colgate students study off campus during their 4 years on one of 100 programs in 50 countries. And we really love to see students go out and immerse themselves and bring that understanding back to campus. By the end of your undergraduate experience at Colgate, you really have developed that toolkit that we talked about earlier. You're confident in what you're doing, and you have a comprehensive understanding about who you are as a person, what's important to you, what you're passionate about, the skills that you bring to the table, and how you can use those skills to benefit your community, no matter how you might define that community. So like I said, that's your really high level overview, but now we're gonna have the chance to sort of dive into the specifics of what this liberal arts experience looks like on our campus, what that looks like for our students, and how it impacts the overall experience. So our first question, we're gonna turn to our two students, Erin and Annette, to just sort of talk a little bit about, as you went through high school, how did you sort of decide on attending a liberal arts institution? So I'll give that to Erin first.
Yeah, so yeah, in terms of just finding a liberal arts institution, or specifically Colgate, I guess, yeah, I'll be honest in saying that I knew nothing about what a liberal arts institution even meant till I got to high school. And the only reason I found out about Colgate and about, actually no, and even to the, I think I could say to the extent that even when I found out about Colgate, I still didn't know the extent of what a liberal arts institution meant. But I was just lucky enough to have 3 other siblings come to Colgate before me. And yeah, I found out about them. I found out about Colgate through them.
Okay, Erin, so sort of to follow up on what you just said, you said that you had 3 older siblings who came to Colgate. How did they talk about their experience at Colgate that made you feel confident that that was an experience that you wanted to have for yourself?
Yeah, so I think, like you mentioned, like the ratio of faculty to students, I remember them emphasizing a lot just how it was a small campus, it was a kind of a small town feel, just how I come from a small town as well. So you'd be familiar with everybody, even though Colgate is known for its intense academics. The fact that it's a mostly like seminar style or discussion style of classes and courses, I knew through my siblings that it'd be somewhat easier compared to, or not easier, but I guess it'd be somewhat more engaging and I guess a little more interesting compared to other schools, because you'd have that constant interaction and being able to really build like better relationships with your professors and role models.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. And that sort of a similar question to you in terms of how did you decide that as you were looking at colleges that the liberal arts model was going to be the best fit for you?
So for me, I always knew I was interested in a smaller liberal arts school because I never had a concrete knowledge of what I wanted to study or even do for a career. So for that reason, the liberal arts really attracted me because I wanted to be able to explore different subjects that really interested me, and I didn't want to be limited to just one area of study. And I also thought it was highly valuable that, the liberal arts education really emphasizes having strong reading, writing, and critical thinking skills. I knew those were all crucial skills to have that would be necessary for any career. So I knew that a liberal arts education was something that I was interested in. And then because of that, I decided to attend Colgate pretty much because of the strong academics and also just because of how I felt when I toured the school and the sense of community that I felt.
Fantastic. So it's always nice to hear how students sort of decide that that path is going to be right for them. But I think it might be helpful to even take a step back further and talk about big picture, whether it is during your high school experience or now that you are headed into your senior year at Colgate. Sort of how do you define the liberal arts and why is that something that you feel is important? Before we hear from our students on that, I would actually love to hear Professor Stern, just sort of a very general, how do you define the liberal arts?
Good question. And I will say that I did not know what the liberal arts were, maybe until I don't think I knew what a liberal arts school was until I started working at one. I went to a huge state university. I went to Penn State University, where I was one of 60,000 students on a campus, and I had classes with 3,000 people from time to time. And it wasn't until I think I got to Colgate that I sort of began to understand what the liberal arts were and what it offers. And I won't say, I'll say for For someone like me, I think I thrived at a large public state institution where maybe I wasn't a part of small communities and I had my own communities and everything. And so like, I think there are different models that can both be generative to really good outcomes. It depends on the people, like it depends on what you want and in what kind of environment you might thrive in. My understanding of the liberal arts, which continues to evolve, I think is sort of can be explained through sort of the moment that we're living through right now, which is that a liberal arts education provides a curriculum whereby a student who is enrolled in that curriculum needs to confront, you know, an array of questions that force them to think about the world critically, but also from many different perspectives. And what I mean by many different perspectives is both from perspectives of voices of people who we oftentimes maybe don't necessarily hear from in public discourse, public society. So this might be people of color, it might be women, it might be people in the LGBTQ community, an assortment of people whose voices have historically been silenced. But it also means that if you think that you know that you want to go to law school, or if you think that you know that you want to go to medical school, you also need to take classes in English, right? In order to, because what we're seeing now, I think, with the current moment is that if you don't have a good, like, we can't fix the world just by being good doctors. We can't fix the world just by being good economists. We can't fix the world by just being good, I don't know, teachers or something like that. You need to have a very dynamic understanding about the world that we live in. And what Alex was suggesting, the core curriculum and sort of what the liberal arts offers and sort of demands of students is to confront these kinds of questions in a lot of different classrooms that will allow you, if you are a lawyer, that you can understand how, like, you can understand a critique of law coming from a history of Black scholars or Indigenous scholars or Latinx scholars that suggests how it is that the law has been used oftentimes to criminalize people rather than help them to sort of like seek justice. And if you're a lawyer and you don't know that history, then you become maybe not the best lawyer for the people who maybe need it most in some ways as protection. So I think what the liberal arts, it demands certain things, right? It certainly thinks about civic life, right? That world that we're all sort of a part of in the way in which that we all are members of civic communities, we're all political sort of subjects in some way. And it ensures that that you don't go through 4 years of a college education without being confronted with difficult questions and hopefully gaining critical faculties that allow you to, at some point, contribute to a world in ways that are dynamic. And I'm not saying that like someone who goes to Penn State like me won't get that, but it's structured differently, right? It's highly curated at a liberal arts university, whereas at a larger institution, you sort of got to make your own way and sort of figure that out for yourself in some way. So, yeah.
Awesome. And to hear from our students again, before you had the chance to share with us as you went through high school, what it was that drew you to a liberal arts experience like Colgate. And so in terms of your perspective, now that you are 3/4 of the way through that liberal arts experience that you chose, how would you define the liberal arts to someone who maybe wasn't as familiar and was considering it as their next step? Annette, why don't you take that one first?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with everything Professor Stern was saying. I think the liberal arts really allows you to explore different areas of study and while also customizing your learning experience. So you're not just limited to one subject all 4 years. You're really able to take a bunch of courses in different disciplines, which is crucial to help you gain different perspectives of the world and really broaden your worldview. And I think the liberal arts curriculum, which includes the core curriculum, really encourages students to think critically and creatively. And by taking a variety of courses, it really helps make you a well-rounded student and a better citizen and person in general.
And a follow-up to that is, within this sort of flexible environment that we've talked about, how were you able to eventually focus in on a major and a minor? What did you choose? How did you arrive there?
Yeah, so like I said, I came in not knowing what I wanted to study. So those first 2 years before I had to declare my major and minor, it was really a crucial time for me to take a bunch of different courses in different areas that I was always interested in, but didn't have the chance to take in high school. So I took a class in sociology, anthropology, psychology, educational studies with Professor Stern. So I was really able to take a bunch of classes that really interested me, and I was able to explore my passions. And so I took a few English classes and environmental studies classes that really stuck with me within those first 2 years. And so ultimately I decided to declare those as my major and minor within my sophomore year. So the academics and liberal arts education at Colgate really allowed me to broaden my horizons and take different classes than what I was used to in high school, and make me acquire knowledge in a multitude of subjects.
Erin, what did your trajectory through the curriculum look like? What, if someone had asked you on your very first day at Colgate what you were going to major in, what do you think you would have told them? And is that what ended up being the case?
Yeah, so I was just thinking about that right now, actually. I think coming into Colgate, I wanted to do like something business and economics. So I think I wanted to be an economics major here at Colgate. And yeah, that obviously it changed. And I was really fortunate enough again to have older siblings who kind of like trailblazed their way for me here at Colgate. And that being said, I thought I still knew what I was kind of getting into. And I quickly realized that, I mean, I would still have much to learn, obviously. And yeah, so I was like fortunate enough to have, like my siblings really like push for, and I remember at the time almost feeling like I was being forced to take classes that I didn't want to take necessarily. And I took like a basic acting course, an educational studies course, and then like a geography course. And it was just, I was everywhere my first semester. And actually I struggled a lot too. But that being said, I think one of the very first educational studies courses that I took was really, at the time I didn't realize how much I would cherish it, and how kind of like, I guess you could say like career changing it was for me, at least in terms of Colgate. But I look back to that first course that I took in the educational studies department, and it really changed like my whole perspective on what I want to do, not just here at Colgate, but with my life after Colgate as well.
Excellent. Professor Stern, Erin's putting you on the spot a little bit for this next question, which is, how do you see your role as a faculty member, knowing that students come in, they have this great deal of flexibility, they have a lot of decisions to make, and how are you able to make those connections and support students as they're navigating the curriculum and navigating their Colgate experience?
Yeah, so I have taught both Annette and Erin and two of Erin's siblings. This is all a very family affair sort of thing. But we didn't plan it like this. How do I see my role in this regard? I see myself as coming into the classroom with sort of like two responsibilities. The one responsibility is to present a set of problems, sort of like pose a set of problems to students regarding what the class is going to be about. So Annette and Erin actually both took the same class, but in different semesters that I was in. And it happened to be a class about, we can talk a little bit more about, Annette's was part of this sophomore residential seminar program, which we can talk about maybe when we talk about off-campus study. But it was a class that sort of looked at the relationship between how do we understand sort of urban development over the past 10 to 15 years in the United States as it relates to education policy? So things like charter schools and closing down big urban high schools for a variety of reasons. Like, what does that do to neighborhoods? How does that relate to questions like gentrification and sort of a re-spatializing of American urban centers in some way? So I come into the classroom with these sets of questions, right? And I want students to consider these things from a variety of different theoretical and methodological perspectives. And at the same time, I want to get to know my students to try to figure out how is it that the things that I'm trying to sort of get them to think about might relate to their own passions, interests, majors. You know, Annette is an English major in environmental studies. Are you double major or environmental studies is minor? It's a minor. Okay.
Minor, yeah.
So, you know, I try to think to myself, like, you know, how do are there novels that I've read that might sort of like illuminate the kinds of questions that I'm trying to pose through a social science lens, right? And how do I sort of like communicate that to Annette? And, you know, in Aaron's particular case, like he actually worked on a project with his brother. I had both of them in the same class at that point, about Southern California, right? About sort of like school choice and Southern California and places that had a lot of meaning to their own personal histories and narratives. And I feel like that's how I try to do it in the classroom. I work with students a lot. I spend a lot of time in office hours trying to get to know students, which I find is a huge difference from a liberal arts sort of small school as opposed to the larger schools that I went to. I would say that, you know, maybe one or two of my professors in college knew who I was, as opposed to here, which is that, you know, I get to know all of my students. I know all of my students' names by the first or second class. I do what I can to cultivate community in the classroom so that my students are also getting to know each other, that hopefully they say hi to each other on campus, and try to create small like intellectual communities on campus. So yeah, I see my responsibility as, I do a lot to try to support them. I write a ton of letters of recommendation. I mean, this morning I was writing a letter of recommendation for a Fulbright application for a student who graduated 3 years ago to do a film project about Black surfing culture in South Africa, which is also a place where I run off-campus study programs too. Since March, I've been running what I'm calling like a Classroom Without Walls program, which is like, there's about 20 alumni and current students who I've been meeting with every other week. And we, you know, as schools sort of like fell apart, I thought it was important for communities to try to stay together. So every other week I bring together like 20 alumni and current students around a text, and we meet for about an hour and a half or 2 hours. And we just try to, you know, the texts are oftentimes responding to what's going on in the world. And we sit down together and we sort of help each other out. So yeah, it's important to me to be a part of the lives of my students and to do what I can to support them.
Awesome. So there are a couple of points that Professor Stern brought up that I'd like to hear a little bit more from our students about. And one of those is that connection that students are able to make with their professors. That's something that's been touched on a couple of times. Annette, I was wondering if you could talk about a professor that you've gotten to know well, either through a classroom connection or outside of class.
Yeah, so one of the first classes that I took at Colgate, my first year seminar, it was called Hunting, Eating Vegetarianism. And I kind of went into it being really interested in it because I'm a vegan. And within the first few weeks, the professor invited us all over to his house for lunch. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is so amazing and something I don't really know if I'd experienced at a larger school. And so I just remember throughout the course how much I loved the content. And then I ended up declaring him as my advisor. So throughout the years, I've still kept that relationship with him. I feel like I can email him anytime I have a question or anything comes up. And so I really feel like I'm able to go to him for help, and he wants to be there for me to help, and he really wants me to succeed, which is something amazing.
And question for you, Erin, sort of regarding the academic experience on campus. If you were sort of visualizing in your mind the traditional Colgate class, what would it look like? What is the classroom setup? What is the sort of relationship between students and their professor?
Yeah, so if I try to visualize it, the way I would see it is and not in your like type of at least like in the structure, the physical structure of the class, it wouldn't look like a typical like classroom, quote unquote. More often than not, it'd probably be kind of like in a half circle, or maybe in a full circle. Most of us maybe trying to face each other. And I guess I think intergroup dialogue is something that is kind of emphasize a lot, but also at the same time push back against a lot, because I know, at least with my experience with professors in the liberal arts, we professors try to kind of eliminate the hierarchy between student and professor, and obviously keep an intellectual conversation, but almost making it conversational at the same time. And maybe not everyone's raising their hand all the time, and I feel like there's just a lot more freedom, but at the same time there's a lot more expectations that come with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely have to bring your A game every day to class. Aaron, another thing that came up when Professor Stern was talking was your involvement, sounds like, on a research project that you were working on with your brother. What was that research? How did you sort of get involved with it? How do you feel like that impacted your overall education?
Yeah, so the research project was about gentrification in a place called Barrio Logan in San Diego. And yeah, not only is it an area of San Diego that myself and my family visit a lot, or have visited a lot throughout my life, but it was actually an area that my father spent a lot of time in his young adulthood, before he had his kids and he met my mom. But yeah, so it was kind of something that we as a family, like, we had kind of talked about somewhat, not a lot, but when the topic of the assignment came up in class, and I think, like Professor Stern said, me and my older brother were just fortunate enough to be able to take the class together. So we figured, well, let's make it a group project. Why not do some research about, not necessarily something that I'm personally tied to, but I mean something that my father for sure has personal history, and like emotional histories like that he's got ties to. So yeah, it was just about it, the gentrification of the area and how it's changed, and the pros and cons, and what it might look like in the future.
Yeah, I think that in talking about research, the ability for students to really pursue a question that is of interest to them, and have something that they might learn about on campus and apply to a larger scale, or a question that they bring with them, and are able to really dig deeply while they're on campus, is something that's really exciting. And I think that combination between the on-campus experience and the larger world is something that we're really excited about. We're excited to allow students to pursue those opportunities while they're here, but also to leave them so that they can leave Colgate well equipped to continue to grapple with those conversations after. Annette, how do your off-campus experiences, your sort of Colgate opportunities that haven't been physically on campus, sort of set you up to see the world in a different way?
Yeah, so I'll start with talking about the sophomore residential seminar that Professor Stern kind of already mentioned. I did that my sophomore year, and that was a really cool, unique experience that Colgate offers. Essentially, my peers and I we were all living in the same building, taking Professor Stern's class. And then at the end of the semester, we all took a trip to Philadelphia, which the class was centered on. And it really allowed us to kind of put what we learned into practice and really immerse ourselves in the material that we learned. So it was a really an amazing experience being able to surround myself with this diverse group of peers and really get to live and learn together in this shared community, and then go to that place and really experience what we learned firsthand. So that was something that was really memorable for me in my sophomore year. And then in the fall of my junior year, I was able to participate in an approved program to London through the IFSA Butler program. And I got to study at University College London within the Arts and Sciences department. So I was taking multidisciplinary classes that spanned from environmental studies to political science. So I was living in a flat there with other girls on the program, and we were like in the heart of the city. So it was really amazing being able to live and learn there, take these courses at London's Global University, and just gain different perspectives from a global point of view, and immersing myself in that foreign culture. And then I was able to come back to Colgate and take those perspectives that I learned there with me and insert them into the classroom and the experiences that I have at Colgate.
Absolutely. And Professor Stern, and that set you up nicely to talk about sort of your role in the off-campus experience in terms of traveling with students to different locations, whether those are international or within the United States. Why do you feel that that's an important opportunity for students to have during this larger academic experience?
I think that when it's done well, being abroad, being off campus can allow for, I don't know, like, I want to say a little bit more humility in relationship to what one is studying. It's sometimes easy to like read a book and think, sort of like I don't know, I'm studying blank, blank, blank in Northern Europe or something. And you read a book and you're like, oh, I totally understand this. But, once you get to a place and you actually talk and listen to people on the ground, I think that in the spirit of the liberal arts, a lot more questions emerge, and a kind of humility in relationship to knowledge then emerges, which is that, like, I don't really know exactly what everything is and I don't have all the answers, but it's important to sort of go and talk to people who are, I don't know, who exist in the spaces where one is studying or something like that. And I have long been a proponent of getting students off campus for a variety of reasons, whether that's through a program called Beyond Colgate, which is, if I'm just teaching a regular class, there's money available to me for any class that I teach to take students to, I've taken students overnight to New York for museums and to see shows. I've taken students to like an animal sanctuary in Watkins Glen with one of the classes that I was teaching at some point. I've taken students all over the place, actually. I actually love doing that. It feels natural to me. I did this SRS trip that Annette was talking about, which is based in Philadelphia, thinking about gentrification. I run a semester-long off-campus study program in Philadelphia about public policy, where students have internships at different institutions, schools, nonprofits, organizations, and thinking about different facets of public policy. And then for a while, I also ran an extended study, which is something similar, which is basically like I teach a course over the course of a semester, and then you travel for 3 weeks right afterwards. And I ran that with Mary Moran in the anthropology department to South Africa, where we were looking at the history of social movements in South Africa. So we did that 3 or 4 times. So yeah, I've had very good experiences doing those things. I think providing some structure for students to travel with, I think, is important, rather than just, going somewhere and sort of trying to figure out by looking at a guidebook, like, what do you do? It's nice to have maybe, I don't know, a docent or something, but someone there to sort of make some connections and to set up some conversations that are hopefully generative to whatever it is that you're trying to think through.
Thank you. Our next question comes from one of our guests this evening, and it's for our 2 students. And the question is, how do you feel that the liberal arts curriculum is preparing you for your career or for life after graduation? So Aaron, why don't you go ahead and give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. It kind of it reminds me of, it got me thinking about like kind of the whole question of like, what is a liberal arts institution? And yeah, and I feel like a liberal arts institution in general, just at least for me, has helped a lot in really thinking about my life and my career after Colgate, because I just feel like I guess just in general, I don't know how to answer this kind of, but the way I think about it, or the way I feel like it's helped me is, like, I think a lot about like being a student versus a scholar. And I feel like with a liberal arts institution, you have the opportunity to be a scholar, as in like, taking what you're learning in the classroom and applying it outside of the classroom setting and bringing it back to your community, and really just thinking about thinking about what you're learning in a real world setting, I guess I would say. And I lost my train of thought, but well, and another thing I was thinking about was kind of just, I think both Annette and Professor Stern have mentioned critical thinking, and critical thinking, as well as like questioning what is known, and questioning, like, authority, for lack of a better term, and just trying to find answers for yourself. I feel like that has particularly helped me, or it's something that stuck with me. And yeah, and again, going back to the whole idea about the liberal arts institution, like allowing you to pursue different interests and subjects, and like that having that requirement of having to take the science courses that are required to graduate, along with whatever particular major that you want to do. I feel like, just again, going back to the whole idea about, like, not just being the good doctor or like the good engineer, but just being a well-rounded human in society, I guess. I'm not sure if I answered the question exactly.
No, I think that was great. And you definitely made a lot of really good points that I think talking about changing your way of thinking and your approach to a lot of things that you encounter. So I'm going to throw the same question to Annette to talk about how the liberal arts has prepared you. But I would also like to open it up to all of our students who've joined us today. If you have questions, things that we haven't talked about regarding the academic experience at Colgate or the liberal arts experience generally, feel free to start putting those in the Q&A section, and we will address those as we have a chance. So Annette, take that one away though.
Yeah, I would definitely second how important critical skills are for like careers after graduating, and I think that's something that the liberal arts education definitely helps you sharpen. I would also argue that two other really important skills that you can gain from liberal arts are strong writing skills and communication skills. I know for me, in my first semester, I had a 15-page research paper, which was kind of daunting, being a first year, never having written anything of that length before, but it really helped me kind of in the years to come in my college career. And I'd say having strong writing skills is something that will be necessary and useful in any career you go into. And so I think the liberal arts definitely helps you hone those skills, and also just communication is so important. And I think being able to talk about something effectively and being able to really have a strong point about something is something that the liberal arts really helps you with. As we kind of already mentioned, classes are largely discussion based, so it really allows you to kind of put yourself out there and share your perspectives and really become an effective communicator.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I think one of the sort of other phrases that gets often shared when people are talking about the benefits of having a sort of this flexible college experience is this idea that I'm sure many of you have heard, is that the jobs that many of you will retire from haven't been invented yet. So it's impossible to get that really specific training for the job that you might have in 30 years because we don't know what those skills are right now, what they'll need to be. But having these communication skills, having the critical thinking skills that Erin mentioned, the confidence to be able to push yourself and try something that you're not quite sure how to do really will allow you to get the great resolution out of that. So once again, love to open it up to any questions that folks have. They can be related to academics, but they don't need to be related to academics. We have two students here. I will allow them to be resources for anything that you might like to know. We have a professor as well who can talk about sort of the academic side of things. So go ahead and put your questions into that chat box, and Ben can either answer them or can let us know that we should answer them. I'm going to ask one more question to our two students while we're here. So Erin, you can answer this one first. What is a class that you took at Colgate that you absolutely never expected that you would have taken, but that turned out to be okay, or turned out to be great?
I mean, I have one that immediately came to mind, but I kind of already mentioned it. I guess I'll just talk about that because I can't think of anything right now in the moment. But I took I mentioned earlier how one of the first courses I took here was an educational studies course, which was called the American School, which is like the introductory course for the educational studies major. And like I said, I didn't necessarily, history was like my favorite subject in high school, and I did really good on the AP US history exam. So I thought, maybe education or history, something along those lines was something that I might be interested in. But I remember specifically at the time, when I got to Colgate, I didn't necessarily want to pursue anything in education. And again, I felt like I was kind of almost forced by, family and friends to take an educational studies course. So when I took that class, just the name, the title, American School, was like ominous to me. I didn't really know what it meant. Like, I knew it was going to be something about education, but I just remember taking the course and thinking like, wow, this is not just education, but it feels like philosophy and psychology and social justice and economics and so many other things. And at the time it was, I could say, yeah, I could confidently say it was overwhelming, but in a good way almost, because it just got me thinking about so many different things. And it turned out to be probably, again, like I said earlier, one of the most significant courses I've taken at Colgate, and definitely a course that I wasn't looking to take when I initially began to apply for my classes, or even when I applied to Colgate.
Definitely very liberal arts, able to study a lot of different disciplines at once and see how they connect to each other. Annette, what has been an unexpected class that you've enjoyed?
So in my first year, I took a geology class called Evolution, from Dinosaurs to Darwin. And to be honest, I am not a science person. Like, I really wasn't looking forward to this course because I was essentially just taking it to fill a science requirement. But my best friend actually took the course, and she said how much she loved it because of the professor. And so I felt the exact same way. Even though I found the class to be really hard, the professor was so passionate, and she really made learning about the material fun. And so that stuck with me. Beyond the fact that the course was hard, I really pushed myself to do well in the class, and I wanted to learn just because of the environment that she created in the class. So even though it wasn't a course that I initially wanted to take, it's still one that I look back on and think, oh, that was a fun class. I really enjoyed what we learned about. So
excellent. And another question that did come in from one of our guests tonight. Is there anything that you learned about Colgate only after starting classes that you wish you had known in advance? Annette, you can take that one first.
Is this meant to be more about the academic side, or?
I think you could take it in either direction.
Okay. To be honest, I feel like I kind of knew right away that I wanted to go to Colgate, so I had already done a bunch of research on the school and everything. So academically, there weren't really any surprises or anything that came up after I had started. I'm not.
That's okay.
I can't think of much right now, to be honest. If Erin has something, maybe I'll have some time to think.
Erin, does anything come to mind for you?
Something that I wish I would have known before.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess both in academic and in a social sense. I love Colgate. I love Colgate for what it is, what it could be, and the people that I've met here, and the professors that I've met here, and just the relationships I've been able to make. But at the same time, I guess if there was something I would have liked to know, it's that Colgate can be suffocating sometimes, both academically and socially. And that, I think that just goes for anybody, especially even for myself being, a white passing heterosexual male. I have a lot of privileges on campus. And I think even for someone like me, the fact that I can honestly say that I struggled a lot my first year at Colgate for a variety of reasons. I feel like it just goes to show how Colgate can be a difficult place, but at the same time, there's the resources and the support necessary. um, despite the obstacles, I guess I would say.
Yeah. Aaron, would you be able to elaborate at all upon any of those resources on campus? You don't have to go into great personal detail, but resources that are available for students who might be struggling in either of those spheres.
Yeah, so I mean, I know for a fact the counseling center at Colgate is highly praised. I mean, I guess for me personally, whenever I found myself struggling, especially my first year at Colgate, yeah, I'll be honest, I wasn't very open about, you know, talking about my struggles or like, you know, my emotional side and things of that nature. So the fact that I had two siblings on campus, two older brothers, and yet at the same time, I would feel like I couldn't talk to them about a lot of the things I was going through. I mean, just to throw it out there, like I failed one of my first classes, my first semester here at Colgate, and that's just on the academic side of things. But yeah, I mean, obviously I know the counseling center is a great place of support, but also for me personally, just being able to be a part of the OUS scholarship program and really being able to lean on not just the directors and faculty that's affiliated with the scholars program, but also the students and people who I just know I can relate to and who can also just be a listening ear for anything that I might just want to get off my chest.
Aaron, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's a really valuable perspective. I always enjoy, I don't enjoy, but I respect hearing from students who did have academic challenges when they first arrive on campus. But earlier tonight, you were talking so passionately about some of the courses that you've taken during your time here. So knowing that you can, as you say, you know, work with some certain resource on campus and really come to embrace the experience that you had both inside and outside the classroom. So thank you very much. Professor Stern, we have a question for you, and that is, what are students most surprised to find that they learned in your class?
I feel like Annette and Aaron could maybe answer this, but or not. Maybe they didn't learn anything. I think two things. Like, first is that you know, that learning complicated things and like studying complicated theories can sort of be fun. Like, I don't know, I mean, Aaron and Annette can talk about this, but I generally feel like when I'm teaching, I'm doing some kind of comedy performance. Like I try to like, you know, like make the class lively in some ways that, you know, we're talking about super important things. We're talking about, do people have access to housing? How are, you know, people who've historically been marginalized, you know, what kind of educational access do they have? And the theories that we sort of use to think about these things are complicated. And I think that, I hope one of the things they get is that like learning these difficult things can also be super empowering. Like it's fun wasn't the right word, but like that there can be something very personally empowering about understanding a world that you exist in, that you see and feel and sort of like does things to you. Like to be able to understand that world is really empowering. And I sometimes think that maybe a lot of what I hear from my students in the, you know, after the class ends, the students oftentimes fill out a form that tells you about the things that they learn. And I think a lot of them do learn much more about, you know, the world out there. Like, how do you like engage with it in some way? And, you know, I think that that's important. I mean, I could probably say more. I mean, but maybe I'll stop there. It's vague, but I think maybe has some kind of kernel of truth to it.
Yeah, definitely. One other question that we were asked, and I think this is a really good question for all of our panelists to answer, because we talk about diversity on campus in a lot of different ways. The question is just generally, what is diversity like at Colgate? And I know that there's geographic diversity, racial diversity, socioeconomic diversity. And there's definitely ways that we can quantify this as an institution, but a lot of it comes down to sort of the feeling on campus and the experience of students and of faculty and of staff. So I'll ask each of you, and Professor Stern, you're on screen, so you can take this one first. What is diversity like at Colgate?
I think that Colgate is a predominantly white and a predominantly wealthy institution. It's tuition driven. And if those are two metrics of diversity, that doesn't mean that all white people are the same or that all kids that come from wealthy backgrounds are the same, but it means that those are two relatively stagnant variables that we know exist. There's a certain culture that comes along with that, and that's a long culture that Colgate has been a part of. And I think since I've been there, I've been at Colgate now for 10 years, I have witnessed and seen lots of shifts in the culture at Colgate. If I worked at, insert basically any other liberal arts institution here, I would probably be saying something very similar, right? Like, I think Colgate is particular in some ways, but I also think Colgate is an example of a certain kind of school that costs what it costs to go to, and has Division I sports and has a relatively popular Greek life social situation. I think that the university and the current leadership of the university and lots of faculty, and most importantly, the students, have been attempting to hold the university accountable to its own ideals, which is to say that the university says that it is an open place. The university suggests that it is inclusive. The university suggests that it offers classes that that highlight, many different kinds of voices. And I think for, like many institutions, I think for a long time that stayed more ideal than real, than actual. And I think that students, mostly supported by faculty and certainly administration now, have done some really hard work to begin to shift a very big boat, yeah, that's sort of, I could say more, but I imagine Aaron and Annette have more to say.
Yeah, for the sort of students' perspective, Annette, how would you sort of respond and share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would definitely echo a lot of what Professor Stern was saying. I think there is some diversity on campus, though definitely not enough, but I do think Colgate is taking steps to kind of increasing the amount of diversity that's on campus. And I think there are a lot of spaces on campus for diversity and for people to come together and for voices to be heard. There's the Alana Cultural Center, which is a great space. I know I love going there. And there's a bunch of different clubs and organizations that exist that really seek to kind of bring people together and have that sense of community, which is really important to have on campus.
Aaron, is there anything you would like to add? I know you have the role of going third, so there's already been some conversation.
Oh yeah, I think, yeah, Professor Stern and both Annette touched on pretty much everything I was thinking about too, but yeah, I mean, something right now I'm thinking about a lot is just like Greek life on campus. And again, we are at a PWI, and that means also that Greek life on campus is mostly white, not very diverse, to be frank. But at the same time, like Annette said, there's plenty of resources on campus and spaces where students can feel not just comfortable, but can feel like themselves and feel like they can start a community or be a part of a community. I know Annette mentioned Alana Cultural Center, and as far as like interest houses that I know a lot of students that are popular with a lot of students regarding like diversity and inclusion. I know La Casa is a place on campus that is praised a lot. Creative Arts House and Bunch House. so yeah, I think, like I said earlier, Colgate at times can be suffocating for a lot of different reasons. But if you're able to to put yourself out there to an extent and kind of have the courage to look for your space and your group, I think more often than not you'll find it.
Thanks, Aaron. With a question from in the questions was pertaining to Colgate's third century plan. So kudos for that. That is a document that was produced as Colgate came out of our bicentennial celebration, which was in 2019, pertaining to how the university would handle the next 100 years, that third century. And the question was actually pertaining to how will some of the initiatives in terms of campus culture and campus diversity that were in that plan be implemented, and when will we see those taking place? And we're actually already seeing the impacts of some of those goals. One that always stands out in my mind on the admission side is that one of the components of the third century plan was actually a no loan initiative for students from families with annual income of $125,000 or less, who would have their financial need met in full to attend Colgate, but that wouldn't include any student loans in that component. So that is just one goal. Professor Stern mentioned some of the challenges of attracting a socioeconomically diverse student body, but being able to make the Colgate education accessible to everyone who has those academic skills to thrive here is something we're really excited about, and we're able to implement just starting this year. So we're just slightly over time. I'm going to wrap it up with one really quick question to Aaron and to Annette. Not a really long answer, but just what is life like for students outside the classroom? What are some of the things you've been involved in while you've been on campus?
Yeah, so Colgate students tend to be very dedicated and very busy. So that means they like to get involved. And there's over 200 clubs and organizations you can be a part of. I'm part of the Colgate Activities Board and the MAT, which is a student initiative to enliven the music scene on campus. You can volunteer through the Cove, among many other things. So Colgate students definitely like to stay busy along with staying on top of their academics.
Aaron?
Colgate life outside of academics, there's so much, like Annette said, there's so many clubs, so many organizations you can get involved with. I mean, I don't know why I'm blanking right now, because I kind of do. I mean, I guess I could like list some of the things that I'm involved in, but yeah, I'm part of like LASSO, Latin American Student Organization. This is kind of academic, I guess, but I'm on Student Conduct Board. I work for the travel agency at the O'Connor Campus Center. I'm really into sports, so I'm at like every sports game or sport athletics a match that I can get to, and just in general too. I think like Professor Stern mentioned that Colgate is a Division I school for athletics. It's also really accessible in terms of your average student if they want to get involved in any kind of sport or kind of club sport. So like I know I do basketball, the club basketball all the time, and I'm obviously not the greatest, but I have fun just getting my sweat on and messing around a little bit. But yeah.
Cool. Well, that is all the time we have. I want to thank everyone for jumping onto the webinar and joining us tonight. Thank you to Aaron. Thank you to Annette. Thank you to Professor Stern for being here and sharing your perspectives on Colgate and on the liberal arts. If anyone still has questions, if anything comes up later this evening, you can definitely reach us by email. The easiest way to do that is just send your email, send your question to admission@colgate.edu, and we will make sure it gets to the person who is in the best position to answer it. But once again, thank you all. Have a great evening, have a great rest of your summer, and good luck with your college search.